I discovered 3 years ago that my husband had a secret life with multiple affairs, and I chose to stay. So it's taken me a long time to want to share my story because I wanted to see what would happen going forward after I set boundaries, and I think I'm ready to share my story. Just a trigger warning, this is probably going to be very triggering if you have been in a situation where someone has cheated on you, or you've been married to a partner, had a partner that has had an affair on you. But I want to share my story because when I went through this, there were so few stories that gave me any kind of hope for healing. And even my counselor at the time said that I had a 1% chance of my relationship and my marriage actually working out. My husband and I had been married 12 years when I discovered everything, and it was like a bus hit my life. It was like I just went into complete shock. This was never going to happen to me. I had aimed to be the perfect wife, to fulfill all my husband's needs, to be the kind of like wife that had dinner ready, stayed home with the kids, picked the kids up, cleaned the house, everything. Like, I wanted to make my husband's environment perfect. And so when I found out about the affairs, I was just in complete shock because I was like, this was never supposed to happen to me. Like, from the age of 5 years old, I was going to get married, I was going to have a family, and I was actually raised my whole life in a very conservative Christian environment to be the perfect wife. So when this happened to me, it was just threw my whole life into a whirlwind. It was like the rug had been swept out from underneath me. It made me question reality and really put me into a downward spiral. And when I first found out about it, I separated from my husband. And I think that this is really important for women who might be going through this, because I've seen some videos on TikTok where you're just going into this complete shell shock of like, what do I do? Like, I've built a life with this person, and this is things that people don't necessarily think about. Like, I've built a life with this person, I have kids with this person, whether or not I stay or go, this person is going to be in my life forever. I basically just have been given this really unfair decision of which hard do I pick. Like, I didn't ask for this, but I still have to choose an extremely difficult decision going forward, and neither one of them is what I want or pleasant. So I describe it to people that I was like, have you ever watched Avengers, and there's Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange is just going crazy trying to figure out the end predicament of like Thanos and what the outcome is going to be. And he goes through all the scenarios, and he comes back and he's like, there's only one that's going to work. And I went through all these different scenarios of like the future, and if I chose this, what this would happen, and I would encounter this situation. And there were just a lot of situations that I basically weighed them out. Like, this is like worse, this is this is bad, this is worse. And so which hard did I want to pick? I get that not everyone is going to be spiritual or faith-based when they go through this, but I am. And so when I went through this, I prayed, and I really cried out to God, and I just was like, Lord, what do I do? Because I don't know what to do. I went through all these scenarios in my mind, and just none of them were good. None of them led to a good outcome, or the outcome that I wanted. I was literally devastated. Like, I loved this person. This person had betrayed me and like basically put a knife in my back. Might as well have done that. And waking up to realize that the person I thought I was married to was not the person I was married to at all. So I cried out to God, and I said, Lord, what did I do? And I truly heard the Lord tell me, Aileen, no matter what you decide, whether you decide to go and you stay single, because that was a thought I had, or you decide to go and I bring someone new into your life, or you decide to stay and give him a second chance, I promise I'll bless you no matter what you decide. But if you choose to stay and give him a second chance and forgive him, I will give you something beyond what you ever could imagine. I will give you something better than what you had before. And I had this vision of a bowl that was like over Jesus's head, and he took it and he smashed it down, and I just broke into tears. And I was like, God, why would you do that? Because the bowl kind of symbolized my marriage. And he picked it up and very gently showed it to me, and he said, do you see like here on the edges where the pottery is just so thin? There's some places that are thick, but the pottery here is so thin, Aileen, that it was going to break anyway, and I had to smash it. I had to smash it in order for me to rebuild it and make it into something new. Now, I would never advise a woman ever to just like copy and mimic my story, but to honestly seek out earnestly through therapy and through prayer if that's part of their life, what would be the best outcome, but definitely through therapy. You can't do this without therapy. I've seen women try to do it without therapy and they end up in really, really bad situations. I've seen women who try to bury it under the rug like it never happened, and if you do that, it will happen over and over and over and over again. It will never stop and it will repeat through your life. I've seen women who do that, and I don't think that we talk enough about how triggering and how horrible the trauma is. Like, literally, women, if they scan your brain, they equivalent betrayal trauma and affairs to the same kind of trauma that a soldier encounters during war. It's the same exact amount of PTSD on the brain. So people don't understand the level of trauma that they're enduring. And being tough is not being stronger. Suppressing your emotions is not going to make you a stronger individual. It's going to affect the way, if you have kids, it's going to affect the way that you parent your kids. It's going to affect the way that you have future relationships with friends. And it's going to completely affect your marriage and your whole mental health life for the rest of your life. So burying it under the rug does not work. So through therapy, I worked with my counselor in setting boundaries, like what was acceptable to me and what wasn't acceptable to me. So I set those boundaries very clearly with my husband before he ever came back home. And I said, if you're going to come back home and, I forgive you, I'll give you a second chance. But these are the things that are going to have to change in order for us to move forward. And if you're not willing to do these things, I'm fine with that. Like, I said it in a very calm voice. I was like, absolutely, it's your decision. If you do or do not want to do these things, but if you choose not to, we will not be having a marriage or relationship, and we will be getting a divorce. So we worked on a diagram of like gray, yellow, and red, and what these boundaries would look like from gray, yellow to red. Like, if he crossed the yellow line, we would be having a discussion. If he crossed the red line, that would be the end of the relationship. I also wanted proof of those boundaries. So obviously, like, one of my very stern boundaries was that the communication with the affair partners would be cut off immediately. And I wanted proof that the affairs had been cut off immediately. So my other boundary, and some people might find this triggering, was no more corn usage. And I had therapy, attending SA meetings, breaking off with the affair partners, and no more corn usage. And these boundaries were so impactful in our healing, and I needed to see these things. I needed to see these improvements without me babying him, without me mothering him. I needed to see him take accountability and do his own growth, his own work in order to stay. I needed to see him go from being a boy to a man, because I wasn't going to endure it anymore, where I had to constantly reassure him and constantly stay on top of him and constantly monitor him. I'm not his mother. I didn't want to do that. But in order for us to have healing, that had to happen first. And so most people might find like no corn usage is really triggering and disagree with me. However, and I wish more women were aware of this, because I wasn't, your husband or spouse, a man, more than likely will have an affair on you in your lifetime if he is looking at corn, because corn is just a bridge to that. When they're addicted to it and they go through their own trauma, their own stress, their own triggering moments, and the board is set up, correctly, more than likely they will have an affair. And that was something that our therapist told us about. So that was one of my other firm boundaries. But, looking back, I'm just so amazed, because God did fulfill that promise. Here we are. It's difficult for me to talk about because it's really hard to revisit the past. So if people are like, oh my gosh, she's not happy because of like her tone of voice and everything. No, I am really happy. Like, God has blessed us tremendously. Like, we got an incredible home. Our kids are doing so much better. Our home life is so much more peaceful. Our marriage has never been stronger. In fact, it was and this is hard for me to say, because when people told me this in the beginning, I did not want to hear it, but it honestly was one of the best things that happened to our marriage, because our marriage is so much stronger now, and he has become such a more empathetic and caring husband, and really taken the time to do all that work. He has remained steadfast to this. Even here we are in year 3, and he is still doing all that work. He is still a part of all those programs I asked him to be part of. So I just share this, that there is hope for healing. And if women have any questions, I really want to help women who are going through this, because there was nobody really there to share their journey with me.